Thank you. Let's see if I can use this. Yep. Okay, so I'm here to talk a bit about the lean journey at the Swedish Migration Board, or Migrationsverket, as we're called. That's the main government agency working with all kinds of migration in Sweden. That means asylum seekers, citizenship, work permits, just coming visiting us with a visa or whatever. We are the main agency. And just to say something about our logotype is to symbolize arches going in and out of Sweden, migration in and migration out. My name is Smidhagen, and I'm head of the specialty unit in the division of reception. So, how did I become involved with lean? The Swedish Migration Board has worked with lean for roughly 6 years. 2008 we began. And I was project manager of one of our implementation projects with lean within our division of reception. We have had 2 major EU-funded projects doing this. So the presentation today, it's lean in the public sector, big subject. I'm going to try to give you a short background about Migration Board, give you some numbers that's going to be good for you to have with you when we come further into the presentation. I'm going to take one example. When I was doing this presentation, I had to cut, I don't know how many pictures, because I realized I had 40 minutes on me. So Victoria, 32 minutes wave, so I know I have to stop. But I'm going to show you what we did in one core process, and I'm going to use the asylum process. That was the first process that we used lean on, and I'm going to show the result we had on it. After that, I'm going to talk a bit about challenges that we had within the Migration Board that we still have. And then I'm going to try to lift us up on the intergovernmental level, because lean is quite big in all government agencies in Sweden. So, to give you some background about the Swedish Migration Board, this is how we are organized. Nothing standard picture. We have a Director General who's political appointed. And we have some legal control, planning control directly under him. And then we have our 4 main divisions: reception, asylum examination, managed migration and citizenship, and administrative procedures. Asylum examination and reception and managed migration, that's the core processes that we have. And the most important presently in Sweden is the asylum process, because we have lots of people seeking asylum in Sweden today. So when we did our lean journey that we started in 2008, we focused on the asylum examination. And let's see. To give you some background about the Migration Board before I go into the process. We have today, or 2013, 54,000 people applied for asylum in Sweden. That's the 3rd largest amount of Europe. So Sweden are the 3rd country that receives asylum seekers. France and Germany receives more. We're not the 3rd biggest country in Europe, but we are the 3rd biggest receiver. So 54,000 applied, 49% was granted asylum in Sweden. We have roughly 300,000 applications with managed migration and citizenship. That's work permits, visas, all kinds of different permits that you need to come to Sweden. When we're looking in our reception system, we have 35 people living at a Migration Board accommodation. That's basically the Migration Board going out and renting apartments all over Sweden for asylum seekers. We have around 18 to 20,000 people living with family and friends. That's, they have some family in Sweden and they come to Sweden to apply for asylum because they want to live with their close ones. The largest groups applying for asylum today: Syria, of course, we have an ongoing crisis there. Eritrea, stateless people, and with that I basically mean Palestine. Somalia and Afghanistan. We are today 4,142 persons employed. That was at the end of December. We are today almost 4,500 people. We are expecting this year that 70,000 people are going to apply for asylum. And you're going to see some numbers when I go back to 2008. So remember 54,000 people. Why did we start with with lean. Why did we begin this lean journey? In 2008, the government, we told our Director General, we're not happy with you. We had especially in the asylum procedures, we had very long handling time in cases. And they said, this is not okay, you have to do something. We had actually, here you can see the numbers. In 2008, as you see, remember 54,000 people applied asylum last year. In 2008, it was 24,000. We had an average processing time in a case from when you applied for asylum until we made our decision on 267 days. So you have to wait 267 days until we could tell you, are you allowed to stay or not? And if you got a negative decision, then you went into the courts, and they had case handling times. The government said, this is not okay, you have to do something, you have to do it now, or we're basically going to take away the agency and do something new. So our then Director General, he went out and said, how can we do this? And we went out to some external consultants that came back to us and said, we can help you. We have this lean. We can help you value mapping your processes. We can help you identify waste, and we can shorten this time. Okay, that sounded very good. And then they also said, we can help you increase your quality in your work. And that's very important, because you have to realize, we're working with people in a very vulnerable state. They have escaped from something, and they have taken themselves from a country through Europe, and as you know, Europe, we have high walls around Europe, so it's hard to get to Sweden. We are at the top end. So they have done a journey before they coming to us. So we need to have a very good approach with the people who apply for asylum. And they said, lean can help you with this. We can have higher quality. Okay, and I must say before, we had no problems really with the process that we had in legal terms. It was sound, it was fair, and everyone got the public counsel, everyone got the procedures. It was just a very long procedure. As you can see, when you applied, it took us 118 days until a public counsel was appointed. Almost everyone who seeks asylum in Sweden gets a public counsel to help them present their case for us. So it took 118 days. After that, it took 173 days until we had the first interview. That's the first time that the person almost telling us, why have I left my country? Why am I here? So you had to wait 173 days until that happens. Then you're staying in Sweden, you're living in Sweden, you're staying in an apartment, you are in the society. So this was not okay. So to look at the previous process, this is a very rough and simple way of showing it. This was basically what happened. You came to us, you applied for asylum, you had an application phase, something happened there. And then you had a phase where something happened, until you came to the phase, and remember, 180 days later, we had a phase where we appointed a public counsel, and we had a lead time, actually. 3 weeks, we said to the public counsel, you have on you to meet the applicant and send us a statement. And then, well, something happened again, and 173 days, we came to the interview part. So we had an interview with the applicant, with the public counsel. And then we have a decision from us. So the company came in and they value mapped the whole process in different kinds, in different units all over Sweden. And we have units from the top of Sweden down to the south of Sweden. And what they could see, that when you broke down these 267 days until actual handling time, that's the time where you have a case officer looking at the case, and an assistant doing something, copying paper, receiving something, that was 20 hours in general. So basically, of the 267 days of waiting time, we only did 1 day work with the case, if we took it all down to 1 day. So, as you can understand, we saw that we have means of improvements here. And basically, this is identifying waste, transportation waste, waiting time, rework. We could see in the process that something done at the application phase wasn't that good, so they redid it at another phase, send it back, and forth and on. So we did a new process. It looks like this. And now you have to be in mind, if you're focusing on the dates, you're going to see it's like 40 days here. So this was in the best of circumstances. We saw that if we compile stuff, trying to be more transparent in our process, we can have a better process for the applicant. So what we did was that we saw at the application phase, we directly when a person came, we appointed the public counsel. We told the person, this is the public counsel, here's his name and address. We also gave a date, 14 days later, to the interview time. We said, this is your public counsel, you're going to meet him, and here's your calling note for the interview time. What we did also, what we saw in the previous process was that we didn't sort cases. We put cases came in, we put them in a pile, and then we took the one bottom down and we just worked through them. So we saw that we needed to enhance at this phase. We took our decision-making officer and said, you have to be in the first line to help us sort cases and say, this case is very easy. We can take this case in 1 day. This case makes 3 weeks. This case, we have to have lots of interview time. And that helped us doing this quickly. And then we had a phase of 21 days for supplementary. That might be in the interview. We had to do more. We had to do analysis of documents or something. And then we said that when that phase was done, we had 5 days until taking a decision. So this is very, very fast going through. Doing all this, we changed a lot of stuff. We introduced teamwork. We introduced new computer system. We introduced booking system. So there are lots of other stuff that I don't go into now. This is a very simple version. But as you remember, average 2008, 267 days. When we had done this and we tried it, we changed the average processing time to 120 days in average. So we cut it by, I don't know, 50, 60, 67, 60% time, lead time we could take away. So today, I actually checked the time for April. We have 125 days until the Migration Board can make the first decision. So that's quite a remarkable change that we did. And with this in hand, our Director General said, lean is the shit. We're going to use lean. And we're going to use lean in the whole process. And to jump on, I'm going to jump back, actually, to go back to this one. We tested this in 2009. So in the 2009, he said, well, this is really good result. So he said, we have to do this more. And then we went into the division of reception, where we have accommodation. And we started, the project that we had were called Short to Wait, and Short to Wait 2, not the best name, but. And in the late, and basically we did the same as we did in the asylum process. We value mapped it, we made standard of it, we took out a new process within the settling process and within the return process. And in late 2010, beginning of 2011, our Director General said, we're going to do this in the whole organization. This is something we have to improve. And one of the main things, and as previous speaker have told, you do lots of stuff, you have lots of tools when you're implementing lean. One of the major things we did was introduce teamwork. We didn't have teamwork before. You were a case officer, you had 200 cases, 100 cases. This is yours, do what you want. You know the stops on the way. Now we introduce teams. And we introduce teams to create a sort of ownership within the team, and to have colleagues and to be able to make use of the whole team's competence. And We introduced work planning, team monitoring, active in problem solving, continuous improvements, and team building. This was not easy at the Migration Board. This was actually really, really scary. This meant that you had to work with people you may not have chose to work with. You had to be open to people with what you were doing. Everyone in the team could see what you were doing. So if you were feeling that you were a good producer, you felt this is fine. And if you felt that you were not so good producer in the cases or something, you might be a bit more afraid. This was actually really, really scary. And the most scary part, the team leader. What? I have a boss. Now I'm going to have a team leader. Someone who's going to help me organize. Someone who's going to help coaching. Coaching. I remember when I heard that word the first, I was one of those who said, what? We're not a football team? Coaching? What do you mean? We need bosses who tell us, who is very clear and transparent and just tell us what to do. And now we introduce a new way of thinking, saying we lead by coaching. We lead by giving feedback and by receiving feedback. That was, as I said, very scary in the beginning. And I actually know colleagues who cried when we did this, of fear of knowing what happened. And if you also remember the time, we went from 267 days to 120 days. How did we do that? Well, of course, we saw that we had an assistant and a case officer and an assistant and a decision maker. We said, well, why don't the case officer do more stuff? So we had assistants who felt, but who am I now? What we were saying that my job that I did, I copied paper, is that not necessary anymore? Maybe not in that part of the process. And here we actually had, I would say personally, a mistake when we introduced Lean. We weren't that clear on that this wasn't an efficiency project. We didn't want to reduce our staff. We wanted to be more efficient and be able to use our staff better. That wasn't, I think, how many received it when we introduced it. They felt now they're going to be efficient and they're going to lay me off. I'm going to not have a job. So that was a part of the teamwork. And we also introduced this structured meetings. As you heard, everyone talked about it, I think. Nothing new. Every morning, 15 minutes, the team gathers and they talk about the day and they talk about what went wrong last week or last day. And they put it up on the whiteboard. We use this whiteboard at Migration Board. And every week, 1 hour, they gather around and they talk about what went wrong this week. What can we improve this week? Where do we see the opportunities to improve ourselves? The whiteboard was also hated because now we brought up names. We wrote up Nicholas 2 cases, Sandra 15, and everyone was like, oh, Nicholas is not so good. That's also why coaching is so important. When I was project manager and out in the organization, many of our team leaders didn't know exactly how to do it, so they like Nicholas 15, Lisa 30, and so on. They didn't put stuff in perspective. They didn't coach. They didn't ask, oh, wow, Nicholas, Lisa, they did 50 cases together. Great teamwork. We didn't do that. Many of our team leaders weren't so sure how to handling the coaching and teamwork. We also had a problem when we introduced team leaders. And I'm going to coming back to this a couple of times. And that's actually my view of Lean. If we go back to this. This is the easy part. This is the easy part to value mapping. We value map everything these days, I think. Taking out the standard and doing this and finding waste, very easy. The hard part is changing the view in the mind. It's changing and getting our middle management with us. And that was a problem we had in the beginning at the Migration Board. Our higher management said, we're going to do Lean. Our staff at the floor was like, Lean, and the team leaders, fine, we do it. You say this is good, you say this is good for our applicants, we will do it. Our middle management level were like, who am I now? We have team leaders, and the Migration Board is a very flat organization. We have case officers, we have middle management, and we have higher management. We don't have so many levels. And now we introduced a new level. So in many cases, or many units, some of the middle management, they were like, okay, I'm stepping away. And we try to say to everyone, we need our leaders to step forward. We need present leaders. We need leaders who are out coaching and giving feedback to all employees. And many of our middle management said, well, I coach every day. I'm like, hey, good work, and stuff like that. And we talk, well, you have to do this more structured. You have to do, feedback isn't just going around saying everyone did a well job. You have to sit down and talk about it. So we introduced a lot of tools for doing coaching and feedback. And actually we did a survey with all the staff. I think it was around 2011. So we talked with the management and we said, do you do coaching? And the manager said, I coach every day. We had so high numbers on coaching. And then we asked the employees, do your manager coach you? None. So why was this? Well, of course we did coaching. Coaching is something you have to be, it's a two-way road. So you have to know what coaching means. We have to discuss what is coaching for you, what is coaching for me, what am I going to do? What is feedback and how does it work? So we worked a lot on that in the Migration Board. So back to this. How am I doing in time? Is okay? Yep. In 2011, our Director General said, we're going to implement this all over the organization. So we didn't have this two major projects anymore, but we just went out to our different divisions and said, now you're going to start working lean, start doing value mapping, start finding ways to work with continuous improvements. Lots of stuff happened here. We introduced structured ways of doing improvements, how we're raising problems in our organization. During the whole time, we had around 50 change agents working around in our units within the projects. And when the project ended in 2012, we did introduce something called the Lean Center. A Lean Center with an objective to make the whole organization work with Lean and sustain and help keeping Lean going within the organization. We introduced something of a handbook. We call it Value for All or Value for Everyone, where we took in what is Migration Board's Lean? What kinds of tools do we want to work with? How we want to do it? And so on. We changed from having change agents to navigators. So we introduced navigators. Today, I think we have educated around 70 to 100 navigators all through the organization, with the sole goal of helping our management level be endurance with Lean. So we have introduced more DLO, it stands for the Learning Organization, where we try to increase legal quality, trying to work how we write our decisions and so on. In 2012, we also said that, well, Lean is very good, but we can't keep talking about Lean. We have to talk about our way. We have to talk about how we do it. And we have Migration Board Lean, or the Swedish Migration Board Lean, that basically the same, but still it has to be ours. In 2013, we also introduced a management development program, I should say. And this is to support our management level with Lean. We're taking people from all different kinds of divisions and have a development program with 30 people, trying to change information between them to best practice and introducing how we do stuff in different parts of the organization. 2014, 6 years later, Lean is very alive in the Migration Board. We have it in all our divisions. Our present Director General says that now we have to take the next step. We have to do something he calls good can become better. And that's actually trying to when we introduced Lean, we did that, as I said in the beginning, of one of our core processes. Then we took it to another core process. And we done remarkable work within our core processes. But now we have to start thinking holistic. We have to start thinking, actually, the asylum process, when you apply for an asylum and you get your decision, it doesn't end there. That's actually just the first part. Because then you're going to go into the courts. And when you're going from the courts, you're coming back to the Migration Board and are getting to be settled in Sweden, or we're working on the return. And we have to see that what you do in the beginning is very important in the end. Everything is one red line. If I would summarize then what the board focus on, we have 3 areas within the work of improvements. As you see, we have process of operation, management and system, and culture and behavior. And in the middle, we have the customer, the client, the applicant, whatever word you want to use. And we have the mission from society. Customer is a very dirty word in Swedish, especially when you're working within the government. We don't have customers, we're the government. You come to the Migration Board, you apply for something, it's your right as a citizen or it's your right as an asylum seeker, depending on what your reasons are. And when we started our Lean journey, we did a big mistake, and this is my view. We mentioned Toyota way, and people said, we're not the car industry. We're working with persons, and we're not only working with people, we're working with vulnerable people. So you can't introduce Lean. Well, Lean, for us, as I said, process of operation, how we organize ourselves, easy part. Management and systems, what do we have for support system, computer system, all that. That's also, it's actually very hard. I won't go into that. But it's still the easy part. The hard part, culture and behavior, and we have talked about this in the previous presentation. This was the really hard part and still are. And I think that when we introduced Lean in the Migration Board, we focused a lot on the value mapping, on lead times, on waste. And that was important maybe because we could see result. But today, I would say that we're most focusing on the culture, to get an ownership by our employees, to get an ownership from our management level, that what we do together. We are important, everyone, and I, even if I am an assistant or the Director General, I can see improvements in our organization, and I can write them down, and they can go up through our organization, up to the Director General who says, great, this is what we're going to do. We are still struggling with this. It's a long way going from the assistants up to the Director General. We have had some cases, simple cases about we have protocols at the Migration Board where we write decisions within our organization. And they can be a bit hard finding on our intranet. And we had some person who said, well, can't you just do this easier? And I had a suggestion, and it went straight up to the Director General and changed something in the organization. Very simple example. But this is culture and behavior. How do we do stuff? Why do we do it? And have a present leadership. That's really hard to accomplish. And you have to understand, Migration Board, we are an old organization, we're governmental, we are a bureaucracy, so we have people who've been working quite a long time at Migration Board. And if you're a leader at the Migration Board, you have your style of leadership. And we have actually started saying now, well, this is the kind of leader that the Migration Board wants. We want a coaching leadership. We want a leadership who gives feedback, who are out in the organization and leads, not by doing stuff, but being present leadership. And we have, of course, lots of management, I think, who would say, that's not my style of leadership. And I think that's the journey we're going to do ahead. How are we going to get all our management levels with us? How are we going to get all our employees to see the benefit of feedback and coaching? This is just a picture. Problem, not blame. Very simple, but very hard to do. To work with continuous improvements, you have to have an organization that's very open. that you dare saying, I see a problem or I see a solution, without having a boss telling you, that's wrong, we have something else to do, you have to focus. Instead saying, fun, tell me more. This is actually the biggest problem at all. Finding an open, what you say in English, an open space within the organization. Not blameful, but saying that you're the best person because you solved 2 problems in our process and you had 1 solution. That's great. That's hard to get. And as an organization, we've been at this for 6 years. I would say that if we were a baby, newly born in 2008, we're maybe 1 year now. We may be starting walking a bit. We have managed the crawling phase, and now we're walking. We're starting to get an organization where it's more open to say how to improve our process. Of course, we are a governmental agency, so we have rules and regulations. Many of our improvements that staff see is like, sure, we're going to do that, but we have to take it up to the Director General, who have to send it to the Department of Justice, who has to take it to the Parliament, and so on. And we do that because we see some improvements that would do it better for our clients. Challenges today and the future. Well, courage to expose problems, as I said. You have to see finding problems or development areas are positive. It's not negative. You have to try to work, and that's hard, improvement with sustainability. It's not easy. Coaching and a present leadership, not easy at all. I'm head at a specialist unit with a very independent person working there. It's hard to be the coaching boss. It's hard to be present in a way that not only I feel is present, but that my co-workers feel is present. Very hard. And then I've been the manager and the lean propagator at the Migration Board, and I know it's hard. Live as you learn. That's even tougher for management levels. Because in the beginning, when we started our lean journey, all our management, especially high management, said, lean is great, go out, do this. And they went out on big conference and they talked about lean. And then when they left the doors, they had these bossy manners. They asked for numbers. They didn't want to hear about problems. They wanted solutions, and they wanted to have the solution themselves. Today, it's not like that, and I'm exaggerating a bit. I hope my bosses don't see this. Focus and endurance, and I think that's maybe the phase that we are in now. Trying to focus and keep at it. It's easy, I think, when you've seen results, you're going from 267 days to 120 days, you're like, we're the best, we've done something very good for the people applying asylum, that you like, stop there. That you say, now we've done this lean, now we have to do something else. You have to endurance and work on with it. To go back to this then, what does this good can become better means? Well, we're going to reorganize ourselves from divisions, where we have worked with lean and optimized the division process, the core process. Now we're going to have regions, and we want to marry together everything in regions. We want the process to see a holistic view about themselves. We want the asylum division to understand that they are connected to the reception. We want to see the citizen and management to feel that they also are part. People who applied for asylum 2010 might become a citizen in 2015. We have to have that approach. And I feel I am doing very fast here. To go back then, governmental lean network. The Swedish Migration Board was one of the first governmental agencies that went into, going into lean. And soon after us, our social insurance agency also started looking at lean. Then the tax authorities looking at lean. We have the Defense Material Administration, I think they're called in English, also started doing this. So together we said, why don't we meet? Why don't we start talking with each other? And we started a network. Today there are 20 governmental agencies in this network. And what we're trying to do in this network is one thing, just best practice. We're trying to find forms where we can, as we said, using tax money efficient by reducing development costs. Basically, we don't want consultants. Why should the government of Sweden use these very expensive consultants when the Migration Board has done some lean? The tax authorities know very good about coaching leadership. Can't we help each other? And that's basically what this network is doing. And as you see, there are lots of government agencies, social security, tax authorities, the courts are coming into it, the police are doing this. And this is actually, to wrap it up, very important, because we did a study a couple of years ago with a person who has gotten a permit in Sweden. And we did this study in the Migration Board, public employment agency, and another agency, with the municipality, you say that, municipality, of Södertälje. It's a town south of Stockholm, who has, actually in a couple of years ago, they had the highest amount of Iraqi people living in Europe. I think the head of the Södertälje municipality actually went to Washington and talked in front of the American government because they had so many Iraqi people coming to Södertälje. And what we did, we worked with them and said, well, the Migration Board, we're working with people who, if we take the asylum process, we're working with people who come to us and say, I need your protection. And they get a decision, and they are to be settled in Sweden. So we wanted to see how is that process going? To make this very short, when we did the value mapping within the Migration Board, with a different municipality and public employment agency, we could see that the average time for a person after he received his residence permit, we said, you can stay in Sweden. It took 7 years until that person was actually integrated in the Swedish society. We could see that information gaps, just like we saw within the Migration Board, we didn't ask the right questions in the beginning. The employment agency had to start over. Within the agency of employment, they had different case officers. All this made that the person could give his story 7 times during these 7 years to different kinds of people. So why am I telling that? Because this lean network and the governments, the Swedish government's urge to be more efficient is that the different government has to start working together. We have to see that we're only part of a chain within different kinds of areas. When it comes to migration, we have lots of agencies involved in our process. We have the tax authorities, we have the employment agency, social insurance, lots of agencies who will work with the person that we talking with and who will get a settlement in society. If we can help that person to have a faster integration in society, that will help the society in the ground area. So the Swedish government, they are burning for this, and lots of our agency who working with lean and working with this, should we call it system analyzing as a system, also feels it's very good and it will make us more efficient. Okay, that's the wrap up.